Barrage the Farage, where you send in your questions, I don't see them and I have to answer them live on air. So I suppose it keeps me on edge. Jacqueline is first up tonight. How would you deal with the massive black hole in the government's finances without raising taxes? Well, the problem is if you raise taxes and get your tax levels wrong, rather than that increasing the amount of money that comes into the exchequer, it can decrease the amount that comes into the exchequer. Think back to the super taxes of the 1970s. They didn't increase the amount of money wealthy people paid. Wealthy people decided just not to live in this country. And I think the whole point about this economic debate is British productivity has been poor. Growth is now slowing. Boris is right about one thing. He's picked up something that I was saying for years, that the over-reliance on cheap foreign labour did lead to productivity going down, did lead to de-skilling. And we need more people like Dr. Andy Palmer. We need more people learning engineering skills. We need more people. In fact, Andy, you're sponsoring some people, aren't you, to do some of these things?
I have a charity which is about taking disadvantaged kids and taking them through apprenticeships. So I essentially pick them up at around about 14 years old.
Yep.
Try to avoid them getting into gangs and what have you.
Yeah.
Try to act as a steward to take them through the STEM subjects. Once they're 16, then basically I pay the first 2 years of their apprenticeship.
And they become productive members. So there we are. More productivity, more growth, and supply-side reform. Part of leaving the European Union so we can get rid of a lot of meddlesome regulations and lift the burden off the backs of our 5.5 million self-employed small businesses. Pippa asks me, if it were necessary to have qualifications to be an MP, what would be the most important skills? If it was necessary to have qualifications to be an MP or indeed an MEP, I wouldn't have qualified. It's really interesting. You couldn't work in the European Parliament, even at the lowest level, unless you had a degree. So for people like me who've not been to university, I wouldn't have even qualified. Look, let me say this to you. The most important qualification for being a member of Parliament is having experience of life, not coming straight out of Oxbridge into a back office and then becoming Prime Minister or Chancellor of the Exchequer. And if you think that was a dig at David Cameron and George Osborne, it was. MJ asks, who is running the country, Boris or Carrie? Oh! Well, not only do we not produce enough electricity without importing it from France, not only do we not produce enough gas, but Boris has announced that about a third of the country is going to be rewilded, which means it won't produce any food. And I think Carrie's influence on all of this is quite extraordinary. We showed you speaking, showed her speaking at the Fringe at a Stonewall-sponsored event. She is very, very powerful. Boris is running the country, but Carrie's influence is massive.